Hi, welcome to Third Space Live. I'm Jody Peel, and this is a show that offers conversations, ideas, and stories around building mental wellness. Today, we're going to talk all about workplace mental health with Aaryn Secker from the Canadian Mental Health Association Kelowna branch. Before we begin, I'm going to let you know where you can find more information about Third Space Life Charity on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website at thirdspacecanada.org. You can also visit the website to find out more about our programs and services and seek help if that's what you're looking for. Today's June 15th, 2020. This is episode number 21. We all know what it's like to work in a stressful or not very healthy workplace. And we know what that feels like in terms of how it makes us feel, and also probably that it doesn't make us do our best job possible. So mentally healthy workplaces are important for a lot of reasons. And Aaryn Secker from CMHA Kelowna is here to tell us all about what that looks like and how to build a healthier workplace. Aaryn has 8 years experience in health promotion. She currently oversees all educational initiatives at CMHA Kelowna, including the free community courses, which are fairly new, through what they call Discovery College. She'll tell us more about that today. She also is involved with their social enterprise called Thoughtfull, that she'll tell you more about as well. Basically, it provides services to business and organizations of all sizes, spanning a wide range of sectors for workplaces that care about building a mentally healthy workplace for their team. Aaryn has a bachelor and master's degree in education and is currently working on her doctorate in educational leadership while working full-time. So she's pretty much a superhero, which we all know. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Aaryn to the conversation and get going. Hi, Aaryn. Thanks for
joining Jody.
us. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Well, why don't we start with the obvious? What does a mentally healthy workplace look like?
Yeah, so there is a formal standards document, the National Standard of Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. That's a voluntary standard developed by the CSA Group and Mental Health Commission of Canada. It is a pretty typical standards document, though, so it's a little bit dry. I'd encourage people to take a look at it if they're interested. But really, it's actually quite intuitive. A lot of the recommendations in there would be very common sense, I think, to most people. Things like ensuring that people have the right skills for the job. So not just those technical skills, but those soft skills as well. For example, if you're working in customer service, for some people that would be extra stressful to have to interact with the community or to handle customer complaints. So do people have the proper training and preparation for that? Making sure as well that people can be their authentic selves at work. Can they bring their whole self, or do they have to hide parts of them? Or their, like their origin or their language, does that have to change when they come to work? So things tied to diversity and inclusion, which of course I think is top of mind for many people right now. So it's quite a lot of different parts to that standard that we'll get into, I think, a little bit more as we go on. But you started at the top by mentioning workplaces that are not healthy and how that feels different. So unfortunately, I think a lot of us have had that experience before, whereas when you're in a healthy workplace, it really does feel different from top to bottom. And I do want to just note that it's not a destination, it's not a checkbox. You don't just achieve a mentally healthy workplace. It's a process, and it's a process for everybody. Every workplace has some areas to improve.
Yeah, I can speak from a little bit of experience. Previous workplace that I worked at, it was a top priority to have a mentally healthy workplace. And I know that we didn't just do it once a year or once a month. It was all day, every day. We had a whole bunch of stuff that we did. But one of the things was we had a health and wellness committee that made it their business all the time, just like a lot of workplaces have social committees. It's something that should be paid attention to all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a new survey that came out of Ontario recently highlighted that about 70% of employers see mental health as an emerging top priority, but only about 20% of them have any plan to address that in their workplace. I can say just anecdotally that some of the workplaces that I've gone to and started working with, their plan basically was lunch and learn here and there or a barbecue. And those things are wonderful, and I hope that they can continue, but we're really talking about a strategic initiative here. So something that needs to be embedded in your occupational health and safety protocols and procedures, your onboarding, ongoing professional development, and it also needs to be something that managers and employers themselves are part of too. So another thing that I've seen sometimes is, this education is just for the employees, right? They need it, but we don't, because we've got it sorted or we've got it figured out. And I can just tell you that no one has it figured out 100%. And part of this is really just maintaining that learning mindset as an individual, but also as an organization.
Yeah, I love what you just said, because I've experienced that in the workplace. It really has to come from the top down. It's not just something HR does by itself. It's something that has to be modeled and actively engaged in every day by the leadership for it really to work.
Yeah, absolutely. The grassroots movements in the workplace are wonderful, and you need buy-in at all levels. But managers, employers really need to walk the talk as well. Looking at things like, do people actually take you up on your offer for an open door policy? Right? Are people actually comfortable bringing concerns to you? Sometimes we think that if there's concerns or complaints, that's a bad thing, but actually it can be a really good thing that people are comfortable talking about that.
Mm-hmm. I know one of the just practical tools that we had at our workplace was we worked with CMHA to get training, and then those of us who received the training got a certificate that we actually, taped on our door of our office that said, "I'm a certified." You'll know the title. Was it mental health?
You probably did mental health first aid.
We did.
Yep.
And then what does the certificate say?
Exactly what it
anyway, it was great because it was there all day, every day, and it was an invitation all the time for that open door policy that, hey, I'm open to this and I welcome this conversation. So that was helpful to us. You also, in our pre-show talk and notes, you mentioned how it's an important way that workplaces can also be more attractive to quality employees. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's a point of differentiation to say that you're focused on mental health, or that mental health and just overall well-being is a priority in your workplace. With millennials and younger generations, we're seeing more and more that work-life balance is a priority. Being treated well at work and respected at work is a priority. And so, just quite frankly, a lot of workplaces now, if you don't lean into those things, keeping your talented and enthusiastic workers is going to be a lot harder. So if you can actually show that you're different and that you walk the talk, that is actually going to make a huge difference as far as turnaround goes or turnover goes. And again, satisfaction and productivity go hand in hand with that as well. So as far as recruiting, even, it can give you a little bit of a leg up over the competition.
Yeah, for sure. So it's not only a competitive advantage, but it's something everybody has to do, because the up and coming generations won't tolerate unhealthy workplaces. You just want to keep them.
Yeah, and I mentioned the national standard at the beginning. Right now, as I said, that's a voluntary standard. I think increasingly you're going to see parts of that become legislation. We see a higher focus right now on bullying and harassment legislation, but actually taking that a step further and saying, it's not enough to just not bully somebody. It's really about how do we actually foster a healthy culture. Right. So there's some things that happen in workplaces that would not meet the qualification for bullying and harassment, but I think most of us would look at that and say it's just not okay, right? It's not acceptable anymore. So we're really talking about taking this to the next level. So workplaces that invest in this now, they'll be ahead of the curve when this starts to come down the pike, because it will. It's definitely coming.
On top of all the other things like maintaining, keeping good people and doing good work. So why don't we talk a little bit about that, Aaryn, about not only the human benefits to having a healthy workplace, but what about the bottom line?
Yeah, so a stat from 2011 that I see quite often, and I'm hoping we'll get some newer ones soon, but a big one from 2011 that we see is that the Canadian economy it costs the Canadian economy $51 billion every year due to mental illness, and a third of that is actually attributed to loss of productivity. So a third of 51 billion, I'm not a mathematician, but I can tell you that that's a high number, that's a lot, is attributed to less productivity. So again, just that bottom line cost is there. And workplaces that invest in this, they will see a return on investment for sure around, again, as I said, reduced turnover, productivity in the workplace, that competitive advantage. People who are healthier at work are also better at customer service, right? We see that inside and out of the walls of the organization. And other community partners want to actually work with you if they know that it's not a toxic place. So again, it's just, it really snowballs as far as the impact on people's bottom line as an employer. And of course, right now with current events and with COVID-19, there's going to be higher stress and anxiety for people either returning to work, not able to return to work. I have a huge amount of empathy for small business owners in particular right now who are trying to navigate these waters. It's quite difficult. And so I know that sometimes, we'll compartmentalize this, or we'll say, well, I don't have time for this right now. I'll get to this when things are better or back to normal. But the reality is that actually they won't get back to normal unless we do invest in mental health. We've got people who are feeling quite stressed and quite anxious. Again, customers included, employers and employees. So this is something really where we have an opportunity to do something a little bit different from the get-go.
So I'm thinking back to my experiences in the workplace, and it can be overwhelming for some people who don't have a formal policy or plan in place to start building a healthy workplace. There's that policy document, 13 points, which sounds really exciting. But there's a lot of practical, easy things to start. You can ease into it, right? And there's probably 101 different ways, simple little things that maybe you could speak to, ways, what that might look like.
Yeah, so I'll start with just even how to figure out how to get started. So the good news is that the shiniest, most expensive solution is probably not the way to go to start with. So it doesn't have to be a huge investment off the top. Really, the things that work best are if you look at the culture that you already have, look at the policies you already have, your mission, your vision, and your values, and even just have a check-in with your staff, either through a survey or if you have a small workplace and you have a good comfort level with staff, even just having some of those off-the-cuff discussions about, are we walking the talk? Are we actually already in line with these things that we say we want to do or that we are doing? Is there room for improvement? A lot of people probably already know where areas could be improved. And so if you can have that learning mindset and that open mind and build up that rapport with staff, you can probably identify a lot of ways to get started right away. Considering throughout this process too, how you're going to evaluate success. That's a little bit tricky sometimes because, the monetary return on investment might not be clear right off the bat, right off the start. But even just thinking about, if we have an employee family and assistance plan, if that's used more, that actually might be a success measure, not a problem or a bad thing, right? People are more aware of it and they're comfortable accessing those services. So there's different things there to keep an eye on. But even just starting the communication about this is a huge start, a huge improvement, especially in those workplaces where you've never said the words mental health or psychological health before. Even just starting that and saying that this is something we're prioritizing now. And as a manager or as an employer, asking for some input around that.
Yeah, two things resonated with me there. Communication being a big one. Communication in and of itself can be a starting point, I guess, because there's a lot of workplaces that there's ceilings between who gets what information, and organizations or places that don't have internal newsletters or communications or regular lunches or something that everybody can connect with what everybody else is doing and what the big picture is. That's an easy thing to do, and it doesn't cost anybody any money.
Yeah, communication underpins all of it, absolutely all of it. And when I was talking about the standard before, one of the elements of that is clear expectations. So people want to know what is expected of them, right? And who to talk to if they have concerns about that. A lot of the workplaces that I go into, it's that clear expectations that is a bit of a problem, right? So we have managers or supervisors perhaps who micromanage, and we all know that that's unsustainable, right? If you're putting out all the fires by yourself, inevitably something's going to get missed. And then the moment a staff person has that freedom to problem solve that they've never had before, they might be overwhelmed by that, right? They don't know how to handle that or how to make an important decision off the cuff because they've never been able to do it before. They don't have that experience, right? Or they feel like they'll be penalized or punished for doing the best that they can in those moments. So making sure that those expectations are clear, asking again for feedback for that, right? Do you need some assistance here? Am I being clear with my expectations? If you're having a performance review and it's a shock or a surprise what you're saying every time, then you probably don't have clear communication. There should be no surprises in those things. So that's definitely a huge part of it. Even managing conflict and crisis, a lot of it is going to be about verbal skills, right? Getting to the root of what's not being addressed or what the concern is that somebody has, not waiting till there's a meltdown or the boiling point before you address it.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that in the workplace, often we tend to behave differently than we do in our personal lives. It was always helpful to me to think about, if this was my family or this was my friend group, what do they need to know? And how would I behave with them? It's okay to be a little bit soft in the workplace. So many people are fearful of that. And it's okay to communicate. There's so much fear around communicating. I don't know if that's traditional culture or what it is in the workplace, but it's not that complicated. And we seem to think there's this big risk in being human and soft and communicating that way in the workplace. And it's actually doing us harm not to behave that way.
Absolutely. And I think another misconception that people have is that if I'm being assertive or if I'm being clear with what I need or what I want, that somehow I'm being a jerk, right? That I'm actually being impolite. Whereas actually sometimes tiptoeing around things or hoping people are reading your mind or assuming you're reading other people's minds is actually going to cause more problems than just ripping that Band-Aid off in the moment sometimes and saying, look, we just need to get on the same page here. We're clearly having some misunderstandings. Things are not getting done to the level that I expect, or I know that you can do better work than this. I've seen this work. Let's figure it out, right? Let's hash this out right now and see what we can do to move on. Instead of just hoping that everything will resolve itself, because it doesn't. It doesn't usually.
And then what ends up often is people start talking at certain levels of the organization, and they continue this toxic, negative conversation, but nothing ever gets done about it. And I've seen that happen time and time again, and it's not helpful. So you need to have that channel, that understanding of who do I talk to so we can resolve this and not have it just sit there and eat away at everybody.
Yeah. People will always be talking about work, and people will always be learning about work, whether you're intending for it to be a learning moment or a lesson or not. People will always be learning about what is or is not okay in the workplace. And if they're not learning the things that you're hoping that they're learning, or they're not talking to the people that you hope that they'd be talking to, right? Those conversations are still happening, and you want to make sure that they can happen with you. So if there is a concern, it's being shared, almost guaranteed it'll be shared, but will it be shared around the water cooler, like some gossip, or to people in the community hearing about how awful your workplace is? Or will they be comfortable talking to you as the manager or the employer? Because they will be talking. So you want to make sure that route is clear to you.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Mm-hmm. So tell us a bit about what your organization can offer people, regardless of what stage they are with this. I know that I've done the mental health first aid course, which was amazing. Tell us all about some of your offerings.
Sure. So at CMHA, no matter who the client is, whether it's a workplace client, whether it's somebody around housing, we really are trying to meet people where they're at. And that philosophy really comes through everything that we do. So for a workplace, we generally want to start with some sort of consultation. It's like a free chat, a meeting, right? An informal conversation, just to find out what you've already been doing in your workplace, what's going well that you know of, any obvious areas for improvement that you have. Or if you find out that we really haven't thought about this before, we haven't talked about this before, we can look at some benchmarking. So we can do surveys, we can do assessments in the workplace. And then we do, of course, have that training piece. So everything from lunch and learns to mental health first aid, which is a 2-day course, and everything in between. So we customize pretty much everything that we do to make sure it fits your size of your business, your sector, the things that you've done before. We have quite a bit of training around communication. So whether that's conflict and de-escalation, or it's how to respond, respectfully and appropriately to people who might be in a crisis. We offer quite a lot around that. But then we can also actually help with some of those policies and those procedures. One of the things we did internally at CMHA is we created a respectful workplace guide. So once again, that takes it from that next level of not bullying and harassing. That's great. That's the basics. But actually, how do we cultivate this respectful workplace is the next level. So we can do things like that too. And really,
let me jump in there for a sec. Just give us an example of what might be an item on that list.
Right. We talked about what we value as a workplace, and I was part of the committee that worked on that internally. And we interviewed all the different teams and different sites, and we then grouped the feedback that we got in themes. And so we talked about what we value, and one of the things is actually communication first and foremost. So being clear, following the appropriate channels, clarifying where you need to. Then we also said leadership. And then we broke that down further for organizational leadership, what we expect from the top, but also what individual leadership means to us. And that was actually one of my favorite discussions about taking accountability and responsibility for your behavior, admitting when there's mistakes that have been made. And then we also said we value diversity. And we talked about race, religion, skills, abilities, but also the nature of our jobs, that we all have different jobs, whether we're frontline, more administrative, education, and how we all bring different skills to the table. And so we actually have those up in every single office to remind us of those things that we value.
Yeah, so that was interesting. You noted that it's really all of our responsibilities, every single person in the workplace, to challenge themselves to behave in a way that's helpful and not negative or toxic. And there's always room for growth. And that's really cool because it must impact the rest of our lives too, and vice versa, right? So
Absolutely, right. Yeah, when we talk about work-life balance, I think there's a misconception that you're supposed to leave your work at work fully, and then you draw a line, and then you're at home, and you're supposed to somehow not think about work and not bring work into your conversations. And I think we all know that that's not really doable or sustainable, and it doesn't feel good when you can't share that full life with others. And so when we look at work-life balance, we're actually talking about, is there an alignment between your values at home and at work, right? Are you doing work that's important to you, that you feel like you're part of something? Do you feel like you bring skills to the table? And it doesn't have to mean that you're the best person in the world or you have a Guinness World Record for those skills or abilities, but you show up to the table and you know that you're contributing something. And then at the end of the day, hopefully you still have some energy and you want to share those things that you've contributed. And on the flip side of that, if you have a great hike on a Saturday or Sunday, you come to work hopefully more energized on Monday and productive again, and ready to have good relationships with people. So really work-life balance is not an either or a drawing a line. It should be a little bit more holistic than that, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about Discovery College. Is that something that's, is there specific courses at this point for mentally healthy workplaces, or what is there right now? I know it's growing as we speak, so tell us.
Yeah. So at the moment, the stuff that we do for workplaces runs through that social enterprise that you mentioned at the beginning called Thoughtfull. So generally, a workplace goes through Thoughtfull, and Discovery College is free courses for just any individuals or families to take. And so, of course, what you learn in Discovery College could help you at work, right, in those relationships at work and helping manage your stress. Generally workplace specific goes through Thoughtfull, and then community goes through Discovery College. And there are courses available right now. Due to COVID-19, of course, we had to switch to virtual. So we're actually running the last of the first round of webinars that we had over the course of the next couple of weeks. And the topics that we included there were managing anxiety and stress. We had navigating anger and frustration was one of the more recent ones. We also had a parent, family, and caregiver toolkit as well for parents and caregivers who are trying to manage with the new reality at home. And then we also had unhealthy coping strategies too. So we know that a lot of people were turning to more alcohol, for example, to try and manage their stress. And that one was all about identifying what are those healthy strategies we have, what are those ones that are maybe a little unhealthier, and how do we find that balance in those for ourselves. And so that was the first round that we've done. And our next round, I'm excited to say, is going to be really focused about resilience and building resiliency. And it's going to have a slightly different format to it. So the first round, we're having about 70 people sign up for each of those webinars every time we ran them. And that was really great for getting information out, but the spirit of Discovery College is really supposed to be more interactive and more voice of lived experience and some personal reflection. So the next round of courses will be smaller. They'll still be virtual for now, but there'll be activities people can do during the webinar, but also on their own time, and more opportunities for some of that Q&A back and forth interaction as well.
Yeah, so just to stress the fact that the work that you do on yourself for your family and yourself and your community is transferable to work. We tend to over compartmentalize our real life versus our work life, and we shouldn't, because they impact each other all the time. So building these skills is helpful, and it's something we end up bringing to the workplace, which is really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the other topics we mention a lot is about boundaries, right? Those personal and professional boundaries. So if you took something through Discovery College, it would probably be a lot of boundary setting practice between your friends and your family members. But all of those skills really do apply once you get back into your workplace and you have to set boundaries with your coworkers, maybe even your manager or supervisor, and customers or clients as well. So I'll just say, if people want to learn more about Discovery College, it's discoverycollegekelowna.com. And then for Thoughtfull, our workplace services, it's Thoughtfull with 2 L's. So Thoughtfull with 2 L's, .CMHAKelowna.com.
Great. So just 2 seconds or less, if an employer reached out to Thoughtfull, the process would be starting with a conversation, seeing where they're at, and then tailoring it to wherever their needs are or where they're at in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. We start with a conversation and find out what resources they have, how much of a project they really are willing to put into this right now. So, we want to start with some training and see how that takes with your staff. Or if you want to start with your policies and procedures, we could go there. So we just have a really good discussion. And again, I really want to stress that no workplace has this figured out completely. So often we have quite a really great candid discussion actually about the strengths and then those areas of improvement in a workplace. And it always makes my day actually when I get those calls or those emails for employers that are prioritizing this.
Yeah, I think it's important to circle back to the statistics you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, that this is, there's a real cost to not doing this in the workplace. And your return on your investment is huge. Building a healthy workplace and making sure that your employees are happy and healthy goes a long way for your bottom line. And it's also the right thing to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it also carries over into your personal life. One of those messages or one of those instances that made me acutely aware of that in the past was when someone asked me the question, wow, someone's on stress leave. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody did the card that they circulate around the office or send the flowers. Everybody's feeling uncomfortable about how to talk about that, and it shouldn't be treated differently. Hopefully there isn't stress leave, but sometimes stress leave happens. And when it does, we should have the skills to be able to handle our team members with the same love and respect and empathy and compassion as if they had another medical emergency. For me, that's when it all clicked. I'm like, you're right. Wow. Okay. So yeah, hopefully that'll help other people too. Making sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And again, it comes back to that communication, right? So asking the person who's going on leave, how would you like this communicated? Right? What are you comfortable with? What would you like us to say? What should the messaging be around this? So it empowers that person to still have some control over that story that's going to start going around the workplace, right? So as you said, people were looking around saying, what's going on for this person? And people start to fill in those blanks. Whereas if we could just be clear about things from the start, right? That this person needs to take some time for their wellness. And we wish them well, right? How much of a difference does that make?
For sure. Well, thank you, Aaryn. Unless you have some final thoughts, we can sign off. Any final thoughts?
That sounds great. I just have to plug CMHAKelowna.com again, and then you'll find the links for Discovery College and Thoughtfull through there.
Great. And there's, for people who are listening in other communities, there's CMHA branches all over Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. If you visit the CMHA BC division website, really easy to find that, and it can connect you to your local branches. And there's other branches throughout the Okanagan and BC and Canada, actually.
Great. Thanks, Aaryn. I'm going to sign off now, and thank you all for watching. You can learn more about Third Space Life Charity at thirdspacecanada.org. Stay tuned for up and coming shows Tuesdays and Thursdays, when you can learn more great stuff from other experts in our community about building mental wellness. So thanks again, Aaryn. Hope to hear from CMHA again soon on our show. And thanks for sharing with us today.
Great. Thank you, Jody.
Bye, everybody.